Oh.
As per the requirement of Public Law 1975, Chapter 231, notice is hereby given that this is a regular meeting of the Borough of Highlands, Mayor and Council, and all requirements have been met. Notice has been transmitted to the Asbury Park Press and the Two River Times. Notice has been posted on the public bulletin board. Formal action will be taken. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call vote. Councilmember Breon.
Here.
Councilmember Card is absent. Councilmember Diarigo. Here. Councilmember Keen Wells.
Here.
Mayor O'Neill is absent. Approval of the minutes, December 6th. Do we have any amendments or corrections?
None.
Do I have a motion?
Yes. Second.
Councilmember Breon.
Yes.
Councilmember Card is absent. Councilmember Diarigo.
Yes.
Councilmember Keen Wells.
Yes.
Mayor O'Neill is absent. The minutes have been properly approved. Public comment on resolutions.
Are there any questions on any resolutions?
Would this be the appropriate time to talk about ordinances under consideration tonight?
No. Once the ordinances are up, then we'll speak to the ordinances. This is just for the resolutions.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
We're talking about this one, 17188?
Yes.
Okay.
And your comments,
Is
sir?
this tabled or what's happening here? Is this approved?
It hasn't, nothing's been done yet because we're asking for public comment. Can you please state your name and
Okay.
address for the record?
Steve Solip, 205 Bay Avenue. Yeah, I'd like to know the status of this right here, this resolution. Is it
That will be
tabled
voted-
or?
That will be voted on this evening.
Okay.
Okay, seeing no other, go ahead. Your name and address, please.
Kim Skorka, 315 Shore Drive. Also in regards to Resolution 17-188, I'd like to know if the council is working on an agreement with the business partnership and any other outside entities as to what fees they will pay to hold events in town. Will they be reimbursing for police use, DPW use, time, equipment? I know we give the business partnership a pass, but if a different group comes in and wants to hold an event, we had this issue a couple of years ago with the wellness event. I'd just like to know what kind of agreement we're going to have in place so that events aren't being held on the back of the taxpayers.
Okay. And you mean this for specifically for HPP events for DPW and police officers?
DPW time, police time, use of our lighting, our signage, our pickup trucks, our garbage trucks. You know, if Joe Smith wanted to come in and host a festival, would the borough just give him all these services for free?
Okay. Your name and address, please.
Carlos Stefano, 62 Bradley Point Road. I just wanted to add, say a comment regarding the event calendar. So if HPP was not to have an event calendar, the commercial property owners still pay for services such as police, DPW, or we're taxed on our land, our building, and our income producing, which is more taxes. Many of us are also residents, so I just want to point out that we're paying for those services in our regular tax bill. So I just wanted to add that for the record.
Thank you. Mr. Sala?
Yeah, the other thing too is, I asked the mayor for an independent task force to review other alternatives and things like that. I mean, a lot of that kind of, questions what we're doing here, okay? And there's other alternatives. We never get a budget as business owners to look at and review. Most businesses do budgets 3 or 4 months ahead of schedule, and then they sit down and review it. If it wasn't for working on the committee, I wouldn't have seen a budget, and I've got a ton of questions on that budget as far as expenditures and, just all those things.
Are
And
you
I think
speaking directly to the HBP budget?
I'm talking, yes,
Okay.
HPP budget.
Because that budget was given out at the last HBP meeting.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter. That should be sent out through regular mail
Okay,
or email.
sure.
I mean, because you go to a meeting or you miss a meeting, people have busy things and they're doing restaurants and they can't get there. I mean, I think you should have the courtesy to send those budgets to the owners. All right, we're paying for it.
Okay, I'm just asking, have you addressed this with the business partnership at all?
Yeah, we've been over that.
Okay.
Okay,
Just
the reason I'm in
for
front of you, the reason I'm here is because I've gotten no results. Okay, a lot of these events here don't benefit all businesses. They're not inclusive of all the businesses. Okay, I mean, I think we need to rethink the thing before we go ahead and approve the money. What's good, what's bad, what needs to be improved.
Just so you're aware with regard to the budget, that's a separate item because by ordinance and statute, they are to submit it by December 1. It's my understanding that the HPP did submit that budget. It has to be adopted by April 1 by the governing body. There will be a resolution introduced with that budget, and then there's a 20-day period where it will be open for public hearings. So the public can discuss the specific budget before the governing body approves it, but that's next year as far as the budget.
Right.
Just so you're aware. This is
Okay,
the
well,
budget.
as a business owner, and I'm sure I speak for the other business owners, we'd like to at least sit down and see, the merit to that budget, where things are going and what we're doing as a town. I mean, I've gotten nothing from this HBP that we have, and I know that a lot of other business people haven't either. I mean, we did a survey that
Well,
I
and
think
that's
is,
something that we addressed earlier in that it appears that only certain business owners and commercial property owners actually received the survey. We're gonna make sure that it goes out to the town and it's mailed to every owner.
just like the budget should be.
Exactly.
And I mean,
You
that-
can't pick and
that's-
choose who you survey, you
Well-
gotta survey everybody.
Well, I agree with that, okay? But even if you get a certain percentage of surveys back, I think whatever's going on in those surveys should be indicative of what the natural feeling is around town. But is that the right way to do it? Absolutely. So I agree 100%, and I hope that we'd wait to see what the results of those surveys are and have an open discussion as far as the events and the budget.
Thank you. Ms. Walker?
Just for the record, I have Oprah requested the invoices submitted to the HBP for reimbursement for those items that I mentioned, and very rarely is the business partnership invoiced for it. And the invoice for the Clam Fest was at a 70 to 80% discount last year. So the business partnership, while they may be paying for their vendors that they hire, they're not paying for the police and the DPW, and those events are being held on the back of the taxpayers.
Okay. Please state your name and your address.
Nancy Burton, 22 Atlantic Street, co-owner of In the Garden. I've been an active member of the Highlands Business Partnership for many years. We get our budget emailed to us. We don't get it, I think originally, maybe 10 years ago, it used to come in the mail, but it does come via email. I attend most business partnership meetings. Maybe I've missed one or two in the past, and I do have a very busy schedule as well. I used to see many business owners there, but we don't see as many, in the recent happenings with, and a lot of talk around town or on the internet about different discrepancies. But you would think the place to come and discuss is amongst your peers or other business owners. So I would just encourage all business owners to come and talk at our meetings.
At the HPP meetings.
Correct.
Mr. Island?
Bill Eiler, owner of 165 Bay Avenue and 30 Jackson Street. I just wanted to make a comment as a member of the HPP, but not a board member in the official capacity. I've been to a number of their meetings this year. I feel like they emailed me to death, and that everything that the meetings discussed really did involve the budget. So I disagree with Mr. Salah that he speaks for all of us. I felt very much over-informed about what was going on, and I think the effort was done by email and was appropriate. On the issue of the survey that I've heard about, the businesses that I have in town, I'm surprised that I never got an email with a survey or got a survey left in any one of our mailboxes. So I've heard there's a survey going out about the HPP.
That's being rectified, they're going to be mailed to all
Okay,
of
good,
the
yeah, just didn't know if anybody didn't know the businesses they had or, what they own. And lastly, the comment about taxing. We are heavily taxed for police, fire, and other protections. And as a tax-paying property owner here who has a business tax on top of it, specifically for the bid, my feeling is that we're entitled to a share of those services also, just like when they have police outside the school system. I don't sit there and say, well, where's the charge to the school board for the police watching the kids on the street? I feel that if there's some cleanup from the DPW and some extra services, the benefit and trade-off to my tax bill is 100% fine, and we shouldn't torture our understaffed HPP with extreme demands to allocate, basically break out and unbundle services in town. Swaps them. They provide a lot to the town too. They don't want to be here without.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Salah.
Okay. Sorry, Bill. I disagree with you.
We disagree.
When we have 2,500 cyclists in this town, and there's not one cup of coffee sold at Katz's Deli, and not one bagel sold over at the bakery, there's a problem, okay? We have a car show that's stuck at one end of town and not through the whole town, where they can see our businesses. There's a problem, okay? Now, I've been to the meetings, and I've suggested things, and it falls on deaf ears, okay? That's why I'm here, okay? As far as receiving the budget, did you get a budget in the mail, Joe? Or in the email? No. Any other business owner get a budget? No?
I got one.
You got one? I didn't get one.
Okay. Can we check our email blast list to make sure that all of the business owners and commercial
Yes.
property owners?
Does it also
Thank
go to
you.
tenants too? 'Cause that's my question.
Yeah, to
Jim-
go to the tenants as
Jim,
well.
everybody, and for the record, it is mailed again with our annual meeting package. So, actually, snail mail.
All right, seeing no further comments, I'm going to close the portion on resolutions. And before we continue, I think Becky, I should have done this earlier, I apologize. Councilwoman Kane Wells has some words regarding our grants.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring this up first, so you ladies didn't have to sit through the whole meeting, because it's a very busy week. But I did want to recognize, and it was funny, I sat down to start writing something, but actually the state's letter is exactly perfect of what I would probably write the same thing. So as of November 1st, I just want to acknowledge, Doc Compton is here, Rosemary Schutz, Marianne File, Ms. Campbell, our board and administration from the Highlands Elementary School. So as of November 1st, they were named a lighthouse district. So basically, I'll just go over what that is. The Highlands Elementary School District is a lighthouse district in recognition of the impressive achievements in academic growth in English language arts and mathematics with a diverse student group. The lighthouse districts have demonstrated student progress as a result of setting high academic standards, using assessment data to identify each and every student's needs, and working tirelessly to provide necessary educational support. Lighthouse districts also simplify the academic gains that are possible when instructional leaders, dedicated educators, and supportive board members work together on behalf of the children in their communities. So I just wanted to bring that up to the public so they know really how hard our schools are working, how far our administrations are coming. I say it all the time, I have one child in school getting ready to put a second in September, and I'm really very proud of the hard work that the administration is doing to really further our children with their education. So I'd just like to thank you for all your hard work. Would you like to say anything? Are you good?
I would just like to say on behalf of the Board of Education, Mrs. Schutz and myself, how proud that we are of our students, our staff, our administration, our school board and our school community. This truly was an honor to be one of the 7 school districts in the state of New Jersey. And the deputy commissioner was there visiting Monday. And you can go on the website and see the write-up. But again, we're just very proud and we appreciate the support. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, I'll make a motion.
Yes, you ladies are free.
Yeah, free to go.
Run while you can.
The consent agenda consists of Resolution 17-198, Municipal Alliance Form 1B, Resolution 17-199, authorized overpayment of taxes, Resolution 17-200, authorized vestibule signatures on borough accounts, Resolution 17-201, payment of bills, and Resolution 17-202, transfer of surplus funds. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
So moved.
Councilmember Breon?
Yes.
Councilmember Card is absent. Councilmember Diorigo?
This is not including resolution 17188, is it?
No,
No,
it's
it is
separate.
not.
It's on
Okay,
the
well,
bottom.
I didn't hear you say that, I just want to make sure. Yes.
Councilmember Kane Wells?
Yes.
Mayor O'Neill is absent. The consent agenda was properly approved. Resolution 17-188, approval of the Highlands Business Partnerships 2018 calendar of events. Do I have a motion?
You do.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call. Councilmember Breon?
Yes.
Councilmember Card is absent. Councilmember Diorigo?
I have a statement to make before I do anything about this. I was asked by Mayor O'Neill to work with Mr. Sala because there were some concerns and the mayor wanted to address them. So I did survey. I did just kind of randomly get it out there as best as I could. I didn't want to disrupt businesses that were open, like restaurants during their business hours and march in. I did go back to a couple of the places 3 and 4 times to pick them up, but they were not available or they didn't have them. Now I'm going to read a statement as to why I'm opposed to the HBP running an event calendar for 2018. I'm extremely uncomfortable awarding a $70,000 business tax dollars to an entity that has done very little in the past 2 years to bring new business to Highlands. The object of a business tax should be to improve and enhance the business district with both current businesses and new businesses. Based on the a simple 5-question survey I answered that I was able to collect, the general feeling on the survey is that the business partnership is mainly concerned with running the events and not focused on what some of the business owners feel their tax is being collected for. This is also evidenced by the budget submitted by the HBP, submitted for 2018, where only $10,000 of the $210,000 is earmarked for economic development, and $135,000 is earmarked for special events and personnel. Another $20,000 is for office supplies, phone, fax, and electric. The 2018 preliminary town budget has less than $80,000 earmarked for a recreation director and supervisor. Based on the state guidelines that I researched for the job descriptions for recreation director or supervisor, both detail event planning as a part of the job descriptions. In addition, the community center has adequate office space, telephone, fax line, and office supplies that have been included in the recreation department budget. Based on these preliminary numbers, incorporating the events calendar under the recreation department will save the town approximately $75,000 to $100,000 a year. Last, the HBP budget $20,000 for beautification and maintenance, which are jobs that are clearly defined under DPW jurisdiction in conjunction with the recreation department. For those reasons, I'm opposed to any approval of granting the HBP control of the event calendar. So I vote no.
Councilmember Kane Wells?
I'm just gonna speak to it a little bit before I go ahead and vote. I am voting yes for it. I understand there may be some discontention amongst the members of the HBP, and that's fine, it's healthy. Hey, I've been here 15 years, I've seen it 10 years ago. So here you go again, right? So you have to come to you have to decide what you want to see out of your budget. The calendar of events is part and parcel of the HVP. The HVP is an assessing agent of the businesses. That's different than the calendar of events.
Don't look at me,
No,
okay?
I'm looking
Because
at
I'm telling
everybody.
you, I think it's all a bunch of crap, okay?
And that's fine, and I hope you get
Sure.
involved. You know, I think it has.
Here, you've got my involvement, you've
Okay.
got some
Please
good
let me-
information. Come on now, sit down and talk about it. Instead of just approving it, look at the budget.
I do, I'm actually.
Please.
Quite okay, so I can't see stopping everything that we have going with the events, extending our season, making things palatable for more businesses. If it doesn't suit a particular business, then let's come to the table and figure out how you make that happen. I know that they're doing promotions now through the holidays, if you have coupons, or if you have this, I mean, they're not necessarily service-based, restaurant-based businesses that can do that. Anybody can be a part of that program. You know, I'm sure your Feed and Feed will have 10% off or whatever, you know. So I just think, you know, I have a hard time seeing that the recreation department can take over 16 events or whatever when you have 5 part-time people, 1 person.
Yeah.
I do have a hard time seeing that because I see how we struggle doing what we do. So with that being said, I am gonna vote yes. And I hope that through the next year, people that do have heartburn over the HVP come forward. They come to meetings, they get involved, they come to their elected
Go to
officials.
HPP meetings.
Yes,
Become involved in that process.
become involved in that process and make a change there. Maybe you wanna allocate the money differently, maybe you don't want it into events, but you want more money into economic development. That's a simple vote on your part, the business owner. Right, Carl? Just, you know,
And to those people who are not in the HPP, just for your knowledge, the calendar of events gets voted on by the HPP membership. So, you go to meet, I mean, there's only 4 meetings a year. If this calendar of events is looked at, there's a meeting, people discuss it, and then it's voted on, and then it's approved, and then it goes to the governing body to approve as well. That's just how the process works.
with that, I vote yes.
May I interject here? We have a community center that is, like you said, being run by part-timers. It needs a full-time director. It needs a director to rent it out. It needs a director to organize events. It needs a director to do these things. We should not be paying, or our business owners should not be paying an excise tax to fund events that the town perhaps should be running. That the Clam Fest has run for 40 years. Only recently has it been taken over. And I understand it's a big, I understand it's a big thing, I get that.
But it
But
hasn't been
there's
run for 40 years.
whatever,
It's-
however many years.
It's been 20 years.
20,
They ran it all
okay,
time, they ran it
whatever. It was run before. It was,
No.
that's not the point. The point is that events in town that encompass the town should be run through a recreation department. Many towns do it that way. A lot of towns do it that way. This building needs to be organized. We need a director in this building. We're too small of a town to do,
But that's a little bit off point from.
Yeah.
well, that's why I opposed to giving an event calendar to a business partnership that's job should be to bring in business into town. What new businesses have we been brought into this town in the last 2
Can I
years?
speak to 2 of those? My hotel
Wait,
was.
stop.
Sorry,
Can
anybody
you
else?
please- Can you please wait 1 moment, Bonnie? This resolution has been
This
accepted,
resolution,
okay?
the vote is 2 yeses, 1 no. Resolution 1788 has been properly approved.
Okay, thank you. I would like everyone to just, if you can, hold your comments until we get through, until we do the public portion.
Ordinance 1721, amend tax, division of tax assessments, adding office of deputy assessor. Open the meeting for public hearing.
Does anyone have any questions as to why we are adding a position of deputy assessor?
Why?
You do, okay.
Carol's like, why? He said why.
Why? Okay. Earlier this year, our current tax assessor suffered a heart attack, and we did not have a deputy in place. So we had nobody there. So we thought it was prudent that we have, do this ordinance
So that everybody needs a backup. So, and this could be through shared service, or it could be through a part-time employee or something else. But we just felt it was important that all of our positions have backups. Okay? Does anyone else have any questions on this? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public portion.
Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 1721?
So motion made.
I'll second.
Councilmember Breon.
Yes.
Councilmember Card is absent. Councilmember Diarigo.
Yes.
Councilmember Dean Wells.
Yes.
Mayor O'Neill is absent. Ordinance 1721 has been properly adopted. Ordinance 1722, resident parking permits.
Does anyone have questions on resident parking permits?
Kim Skorka, Shore Drive. I don't think the council, let me back up. I don't object to anything about Willow Street and Locust Street. That have a different problem than Shore Drive, and if they want permits, I'm all for it. I don't think the council understands the issue of parking on Shore Drive. A lot of the complaints came from the condominium and apartment residents that they couldn't see when they were pulling out of their driveway, because cars are allowed to park as close to the driveway as they want. The complaint is the poor visibility, and I believe the easiest solution would be just to paint yellow curbs and enforce the curbs so people have adequate visibility. It would be less expensive than issuing, maintaining, and enforcing the parking permits, guest parking permits, etc. along Shore Drive. Also, people park on Shore Drive and not the C Street lot because of the traffic coming out. So these people aren't going to continue, they're not going to move their cars into the parking lot or down to the overflow lot. They're going to move their cars to Marie Avenue and Bayside Drive. It's a shorter walk as opposed to the other driveway, and you're not going to have different residents complaining about cars parking too close to driveways and even taking their parking, because not every house on Bayside Drive has a driveway. So now you've traded one problem, which is visibility, which is easily solved with yellow curbs, for a whole other host of problems. In addition, the DPW is now going to have to ensure that all the corners, crosswalks, and fire hydrants are painted, the curbs by the fire hydrants are painted yellow along Shore Drive, Bayside Drive, and at all the cross streets. The police will need to patrol Bayside Drive to enforce those no parking areas, in addition to patrolling Shore Drive for parking permits. In my opinion, this is a poor use of our police force and an added burden that can easily be avoided. Also, you'll now have more people crossing Shore Drive, and if you weren't aware, we have a problem with pedestrian crossing in this town and cars not paying attention. It's going to lead to an accident, hopefully not a fatality. Also, I saw no mention of hours for permit parking. I'm shocked that the Highlands Business Partnership is allowing this. Event parking is already a disaster and a traffic nightmare, and adopting this ordinance will make it worse. If you revise the ordinance to allow parking on Shore Drive on the evening and weekends, now you've got the same issue that the residents were complaining about, visibility, especially during events like Plant Fest and the bike event. We're already at parking capacity for the Bike New York event, and now you've removed parking. So I don't know how you're going to control that. Maybe reduce the number of participants for Bike New York. But on the plus side, enforcing parking permits during these events would be a nice little fundraiser for our borough. And I would expect this ordinance to be enforced, because why else would you bother adopting it? And if you're adamant about adopting this ordinance, I would like you to extend the permit parking, because right now the ordinance goes from Marie Street down to Willow. I want you to extend it from Marie over to Central Avenue, because the rest of the residents on Shore Drive should be given the same courtesy that you're giving to people who, they only complain about pulling out of their driveways. The rest of Shore Drive, especially from 313 to 319, do park on the street. And we need that parking.
Okay. Ms. Buckner? Harold Buckner, 330 Shore Drive.
If you had been at the meetings, Kim, you would know for at least 2 years, I have been asking to paint our curbs. And it is illegal to paint the driveway curbs. Now, in spite of the fact they painted the whole curb by the sandpiper except for one parking spot, and there's no reason for that. But the fact is that we cannot access the road safely with the cars parked there. And we had permit parking before, and Joe Blewett arbitrarily decided that we didn't need it anymore. Well, I tell you, the people from C Street coming out the driveway do not stop. They do not stop for anything. I turn my bright lights on and honk my horn to get down the road. And they just don't stop. And we can't see to get out of our driveway, so if they're coming from both sides, because the bus guy is absolutely disrespectful. He honks if you're going 25 miles an hour, and he doesn't like interfering with this running back and forth. But in the meantime, people go over there, they get their cars, so they're coming at us from both directions. We can't see it. We have had 2 accidents down there already. One was not reported, but I mentioned it to Chief Burton. And the other one, I presume, was reported, and I understand the car was practically totaled. I don't have any facts on that, by the way. But I have been asking for this. It was in effect before. It had no impact on any place else in town. It had no impact on Bayside Drive, had no impact on Marie Street, it had no impact on any place, and it's just a short distance. And the residents down past us, they don't all have driveways or garages either, so they automatically will get the resident parking stickers, which they did, and they could park there. So I think that you're totally wrong on your assessment. It's not going to tax the police because they just have to write a ticket, then we make money. You know, they write a ticket, we make money. That's the way it goes. So I really think I was going to congratulate you on proving this. If you approve it, if you don't approve it, I'll be back again.
Okay, thank you.
Carlos Bell on behalf of the Highlands Business Partnership. I have been discussing it with some of our businesses that it will impact, as you can see here this evening. So basically, you know, I think a lot of what Kim said, I happen to agree with, shocking. But what I wanted to address is that possibly, since it seems that the number one issue that everyone seems to have are commuters, if it has to be some type of parking permit, perhaps they don't interfere in the dinner hours. I mean, I don't know if that's something that was looked at, you know, perhaps something, you know, one idea that some of the business owners came up with is that, you know, if it was no parking, say, whatever, 8 to 4, then, you know, obviously people wouldn't park there, or if it was resident parking, whatever, for those hours, but yet you'd still be able to have use of the parking during dinner hours, so it doesn't affect the local businesses.
You're saying dinner hours, are you?
Like, in other words, if it was during certain hours, so you wouldn't have your parking permit from 8 to 4, even though 4 is whatever. Kind of
Whatever.
early. No, but the problem is, the thing is, people wouldn't park there because they wouldn't be back in time. Right. So it's just one of the ideas that came up, I just wanted to throw it out there.
I have to disagree with that because nobody is parking any place on Shore Drive to go to dinner any place in Highlands, in our area, in our area. No, I'm sorry. I look out the window every day. I look out the window every day,
Okay.
and I see that there is no parking problem at the Bay Point Inn at this time, and they have the whole parking lot of C Street, and they have a little ladder that the employees park there and they walk up. So, you know, that can be solved. But we go out at the dinner hour on Friday night and we can't get out of our house.
Chief Burton, do you have anything to add on the public safety issues that were brought up? Yes. Yeah. If you could please state your name and address for the record.
Tim Bowman,
owners of Sandy Hook Bay Marina. And there's just a little bit of background that maybe some folks are not familiar with. So I had a chance to read this ordinance, and areas that I think there's agreement on is that we would agree with you, Kim, that the Willow Street, item number 1, Locust Street, preventing, having resident parking stickers there, probably makes sense. However, when you get to Shore Drive, there is a little bit of history here, which I think everybody should be aware of, which is that when we went in for planning board approval for Sandy Hook Bay Marina back in 2013/14 or thereabouts, this very same issue about parking on Shore Drive was running in parallel with our applications. And when we made our application, there was extensive testimony by our traffic engineer about the parking lot use, and there was, a lot of questions and information provided, and the answer was always that there was, on-street parking on Shore Drive, not necessarily for the patrons of the restaurant, for the vast majority of the year. Occasionally, the restaurant gets overrun, the marina gets overrun, and those folks need another place to park. And so, they go out to Shore Drive. But really, the purpose of the overflow parking is to have parking for the employees at those points in the season where there's just simply not enough parking in the parking lot of the Sandy Hook Bay Marina. This was all thought about, it was discussed, there was a lot of back and forth. I would encourage everybody to go back and check the record, and you'll see that what I'm saying, I think, is pretty accurate. So, we are a large taxpayer in town, and to not have access in limited situations through the course of the year to on-street parking, it's spending a lot of money in tax money. We're not asking for it every day, all the time. We're not asking for that access as a chronic condition. We're asking for it to need it when there are certain points in time where it's required. So we don't think that is an unreasonable request, particularly given the fact that there was a lot of time, effort, and money spent to try to sort this issue out going back when we received our original approvals. And I think there's a lot of new folks here, and people bring their perspective, which is always healthy. We want to be good neighbors. I'm certainly not interested in getting our neighbors upset out on Shore Drive. That's not my goal. My goal is to make sure that we can operate the restaurant appropriately, that we can operate the marina appropriately, be a good corporate neighbor. But to do that, it's got to be a little give and take too. So I'm not sure what the solution really is. I can tell you that we spent just a few minutes before I came here tonight pulling those files out, making sure I really understood. There was a lot of discussion about our needs going from Shore and Willow down to Matthew, that street, and that would provide certainly enough capacity for I'll just say the marina/restaurant needs. The other thing that was discussed extensively was the fact that a lot of the folks on Shore Drive do have an ability to park their cars in front of their homes or in driveways. There's access parking, there's restricted parking for residents only. Some of those other side streets, I can't remember the exact name, maybe King, and then Bay Shore runs behind it. It's kind of restricted parking for residents. So what do we do, to try to find a little bit better balance for the needs of, say, the commercial side of town over there. So, Carol, I'm not trying to make life difficult, and you're right about those guys climbing up the ladder to get into the parking lot, but the problem is we can't necessarily rely on C Street's goodwill to have the marina and the restaurant perform and make it actually a safe condition for everybody. So ultimately, people are going to show up at the restaurant, and what's going to happen? If they can't get the parking, they're either going to park illegally and get somebody upset, or they're going to leave. And why would you want them to leave? So.
The point is, the parking that I'm talking about does not have any effect on the district. No. It's just in front of Bayview, and that's it.
So you're further.
Yeah.
Okay. So that would be consistent with the marketing study,
and at that time, when they did the study, we had permit parking, and they took it away.
Carol, Jen,
Okay, yeah, sorry. Sorry.
Thank you.
So that's
Chief, if you could please, give us a little here.
What I'll start with is, I'm not gonna get into a debate here tonight, that's not what I wanna do. But I do appreciate everybody's concern. I've gotten emails about this, I've spoken to residents, I've spoken to a number of people, I've spoken to the council. Tonight, my recommendation to the council is to approve this ordinance, okay? It's not the answer, and I know it's not the answer, but it's a start. Everyone here got up, and everyone has a different opinion on how this is gonna work out, okay? But I think this is a good start. To take this away, to amend this, it happens in the meeting. I go down to that area every single morning because I'm concerned about that area. I look at it, I see what cars are there, I see who goes to work, who leaves their car home, how many cars are overflowed from whatever business is down there. This is something that I look at regularly, every single day. That's why this ordinance was brought to the council, because I think it's a good start. Will this get amended? It probably will at some point. It probably will. There's other things that are coming out, as Council President Brouillon, her and I, and the administrator and the mayor had a meeting about this. This is the first step. It doesn't happen in a second, overnight. This is the first step. We're going to do this, hopefully. We're going to do this, and we're going to see where it goes. This is, but again, this isn't the end all be all. I do really appreciate everybody's concerns, their comments. But again, I hope that this gets approved. And it's not going to be the end. This is just the beginning. We have the signs, as somebody said, as far as cost and stuff like that. We have the signs. They're all just going to get put right back up where they are, where they were, rather. We're going to move forward. It's not the end. And with regards to what Carol said and Kim said about the vehicles encroaching on the driveways, the mayor and I drove down there, the municipal attorney, we drove down there together just to put our heads together to, and we're getting some other professionals and experts in this field involved as well. So that's going to come out later on.
Thank
That's
you
all
so
I have
much.
right now.
Yes.
Well, I have a tremendous respect for the chief, and he knows that on a certain personal level. Wouldn't it be better to study the issue a little bit more and perfect it, given the fact that you're going to change it? Already we're passing something that's got to be modified or changed to some extent. So why pass something just to amend it down the line? Why not study it, figure it out, and then pass it once and for all? Just a thought. Unless there is, I'll shoot myself in the foot here, unless there is some overriding public safety issue, someone's going to get killed, no one wants any of that. But, you're dealing with, from our perspective, we're looking for a little bit better balance here so that we can do what we need to do at that end of town. So,
To answer to that, this is not a science. We have to, as the chief said, we have to try to see what works, what doesn't, and to what effect. Maybe it is that it only is for a certain day part, or not. We're doing this in the off season when there's not as many people coming into town. So we can see a little bit how it's working, and then we can amend it. And if we amend it to be just for certain hours, as Carla had recommended, maybe that's the way that it goes. It's like sometimes you have to try on something, then you see what works, and then what doesn't, and then you fix it.
One thing, I'm sorry to interrupt, one thing that the borough attorney put in there, if there was a second amendment to that ordinance, that I have the authority, or my designee has the authority to suspend that at any time. So if you do have an event or something going on, we can suspend the resident board. That's written into the new version.
Kim Scorpio Shore Drive. Just to speak to Carol's comment about Sandpiper having a yellow curb, there's a crosswalk. So there's yellow for the crosswalk, and then there's a fire hydrant right there. So it looks like they have a big, now the side of the driveway by Havana, I don't know if that's yellow or not, but that's part of the reason. So I have a suggestion, especially for where Carol lives. That condo complex spans Shore Drive, and I have a friend who lives on one side, and the laundry is on the other. So maybe you want to put a crosswalk, and then you get your yellow curves.
Oh, is that what we have to do?
I'm trying, Carol, I'm trying.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, I'm gonna close the public comment now.
Do I have a motion to adopt
Some motions.
1722? Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Councilmember Rion?
Yes.
Councilmember Card is absent. Councilmember Diorigo?
Abstain.
Councilmember Kane Wells?
Yes, and I would just like to reiterate that it is a start. I think we have to let the police do their job, to start with certain aspects of how this is gonna work. I think it will most likely be amended. But it takes 3 months to get it to this point. It takes one meeting to amend it. So you have to be mindful of that as well. It takes a long time to get it to the point where we have hearing and adoption as to when we have this, but I think it's definitely a start. And I'd also like to see, moving forward, like Mr. Bowman's issue, when the planning board has information like that, I don't know how fluently it comes over to the other side of the house so that you would be aware of traffic studies. You know, it may have been under Chief Fluid somewhere. Right, and that's what I think, that's just a communication, with us not knowing, because I know I never sat on the land use board, but knowing how that gets over to the borough side would make us better educated and make more decisions. Knowing. That's it.
We'll skip to it? Okay.
There was an abstention vote. That vote is not counted, so you don't have a quorum. That's as if the person's not here.
The mayor's on the phone, so we do have a quorum.
I didn't hear that.
Can just vote.
Okay. Oh, for the bond ordinance?
Yeah. But he can vote on this one.
Mayor, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, can we do the roll call for ordinance 1722? Councilmember Brion?
Yes.
Councilmember Carr is absent. Councilmember Diorigo?
Abstain.
Councilmember Kane Wells?
Yes.
Mayor O'Neill?
Yes.
The ordinance 1722 has been properly adopted. Okay.
Yeah, can we jump to 1725, please?
Sure. Ordinance 1725, bond ordinance amending bond ordinance 1320, which provides for the reconstruction of North Street Pump Station, adopted October 24th, 2013. Open to the public.
Open to the public. Just to let you guys know, the only change in this ordinance, there's no change to any dollar amounts. We've only added the words included but not limited to. That is the only change in this ordinance. And with that, does anyone have any questions? Seeing no questions, I'll close public portion. Roll call.
Motion to adopt 1725.
So motion.
Second. Sorry.
Second.
Councilmember Brion?
Yes.
Councilmember Card is absent. Councilmember Diorigo?
Yes.
Councilmember Kane Wells?
Yes.
Mayor O'Neill?
Yeah.
Ordinance 1725 has been properly adopted. Ordinance 1723, tax agreement with Sandy Hook Developers LLC, Block 101, Lot 27.03. Open to the public.
Just to give you some background, early 2016, we had a resolution to put this in place. We're just formalizing this ordinance. Does anyone have any questions?
Well, let me also just clarify, in 2016, there was the intent to enter into a tax agreement. This has been going on for some time, as Mr. Baldwin from Sandy Hook did submit the application, properly submitted it. However, there's certain criteria that he has to meet before the tax agreement can be put in place. One of them is including all the statutory criteria, and that contains the borough ordinance, is obtaining the final certificate of occupancy. It's my understanding that he does have a TCMO, which is set to expire, I believe, in May, and it's my understanding that they anticipate satisfying all the criteria for the borough engineer and construction official to get that final CFO in the spring.
Go ahead, sir.
Not to be too aggressive, but that is incorrect. So,
Please state your name for the record.
Your name and
State
address.
your name again for the record.
So, back in June 2016, the mayor and council did pass a resolution, and the criteria to meet the tax exemption was that the, and I'll quote, the tax exemption cannot be granted until completion of the project, and then it goes on and on and on. Completion of the project that I'm playing attorney has very specific statutory definitions. And it has nothing to do with either TCO or final certificate. So in effect, this ordinance has shifted the criteria from, to the completion standard to a certificate of, final certificate standard, which I don't think is appropriate either for myself in the factual circumstances I'm dealing with at Sandy Hook Bay Marina, whether those circumstances are practically driven, and I'll talk about that in a minute, or kind of out of my control, which I'll talk about in a minute. But any other waterfront developer, whether it's me or whoever it happens to be, is going to be faced with this exact same criteria. So it's extremely important that the mayor and council, when they make their deliberations, understand, I think, the ramifications of some of these rather small, what would seem to be inconsequential standards. But they have huge, huge impact. So if you are a developer thinking about coming into Highlands, one of the things that you are attracted to is the fact that there is a tax abatement program available. Highlands competes, people have heard us talk about this forever, against every other municipality and city. Joe Emile, who was here a minute ago and walked out, could have been in Asbury Park. He probably had a preference to be in Asbury Park. He was looking in Long Branch. He ended up coming to Highlands, New Jersey. One of the reasons he came here was because he believed in what the project was, but also the tax abatement. Now, poof, he's in a startup mode, and he doesn't have access to that tax abatement, which he feels, correctly or incorrectly, and I feel, correctly or incorrectly, was kind of what we signed up for. We pulled a long train. We got capital partners. We got banks to answer to. We got a gazillion people to talk to. And so, when the standard shifts like this, you get this kind of visceral reaction from a guy like me, and probably other people who are in the same kind of situation. So let's just talk about the practicality of, changing the standard. A completion standard, I just happen to do.
The definition is sufficiently complete in accordance with the plans and construction documents so the owner can occupy or utilize the work for its intended use.
That was a standard. That's a standard we signed up for. It wasn't a temporary CO, and it wasn't a final CO. So that's a totally different standard. Maybe council would disagree. I don't know. But there are practical.
Jason, could you also please just state your name and address on the record?
My name is Luke Bollerman. I was the project manager for Sandy Hook Bay Marina.
I brought him in because he has some details.
It's just that we can have it on the record.
I understand. So practicality. Let's talk about practicality just for a moment. Why can't we get a final CO? Well, we're not going to get a final CO unless your town engineer, T&M, and all of your professionals and consultants behind them sign off on the plan, saying we've completed every little thing on that drawing and those specifications that was approved. Some of those approvals are outside of any of our control. We're before Army Corps of Engineers. We're before FEMA. We're before the DEP. We're before freehold conservation. A lot of these things are out of our control in terms of how we get that final sign-off. There are some very, very, very high standards that have been set, either through interpretation or a view of what the circumstances dictated or whatever. But those standards lead to delays, they lead to cost, and they lead to ultimately the delay of a final CO. We have a temporary CO. We have a temporary CO for the marina, and we have a temporary CO for the restaurant. It's just getting to that next level. So there's a lot of things that are just totally out of our control. So that means we're trying our best. We're in there every day, swinging as hard as we can. There's nobody who wants a final CO more than me and my bank. Trust me, it's not like for lack of trying or effort. It's not like we're just disregarding the responsibility. We're trying, and we want to get the final. We want to get that final certificate. But to hold up the tax abatement to tie the tax abatement to that, I think is an incorrect standard. Just-
Okay, well then, let's
Okay,
just
let me-
go to get.
Let me finish. I'm not even done.
I was gonna say, you can't throw everything out on the table and then expect us to, piecemeal
No,
answer
no.
your questions. I'd
Yeah,
like
no,
to
there's
get
one other thing.
our attorney to give his legal opinion as to why this language was used.
I disagree with you because you mentioned occupier use for the intended use, and just like the other tax agreement we have in place, that contemplates a final certificate of occupancy. Temporary certificate of occupancy has an expiration date. That's one of the components. Obviously, I don't have to tell you, it can't be delinquent in taxes and all that, and it takes effect the first full year following project completion, which is final COO. And I know that we've had those discussions, that you could disagree or not. This does not contradict the resolution with just intended. Once you satisfy all the criteria, it has to be done by ordinance, and it's still not going to be done until you meet all the criteria. Now, if you're having issues with the CO, discuss that with the borough engineer.
The issue we run into is a very practical one, which is when you're walking in our shoes, some of the standards and some of the things that we need to accomplish, we just can't achieve overnight. We are beholden to other agencies, we're beholden to other standards that are imposed by us through other layers of government. We could have a long discussion about whether some of them are appropriate, some are doesn't matter. The reality is that we need to satisfy those other agencies, and they need to sign off on paperwork, and that paperwork goes to your engineer before you will even entertain the notion of a request for a final CO. And so you're linking that whole process to a tax abatement program. That's what's going on here.
No, project completion days, occupier use for the intended use, that's the final certificate of occupancy. You can disagree, and we can, continue to.
Completion of completion, I think is a different standard than a final temporary certificate of occupancy. I deal in municipalities all over Monmouth County. I deal with temporary COs that go on for a long time because there's things that we just can't achieve that they need in order to provide that final CO. I could give you example after example after example. I'll give you the most striking one. I couldn't get a final CO for a building I was doing down in Wall Township because Monmouth County wanted to expand a county road that was adjacent to our property. I couldn't complete the work until they went through their process. I had a temporary CO for 7 years. That's one example. I could sit here and give you 15. But there's another practical issue here, is when you're developing along the waterfront, and particularly when you're developing bulkheading and wave screens and stuff that is subject to the elements, the engineering is not, it's not 100%, perfect. There's standards, and you want to be sure that whatever you're building is in fact going to stand the test of time. And I have every confidence that we've done that in Sandy Hook Bay Marina. But that process means that you let a certain period of time go by to test the theories, to test the engineering, to make sure that there's no failure in the bulkhead, for example. So that's the big one. Because if we do, now we've got to start ripping everything up. So there's reasons why we intentionally don't go forward with certain aspects of the work, which on the outside may seem like, why don't you just do it to get your final CO? Because we know it's not the right process. So it's those kinds of things that lead us to the point where, we are delayed sometimes in going for a final CO. It's not that we're not incentivized or don't want to, it's just there are practicalities that we have to deal with. And you're gonna, whether it's me or you guys are gonna make a decision and public policy is gonna be your public policy. But I guarantee you, I'm not gonna be the first guy sitting here, bringing this issue up. Because
Let me make a suggestion. You have counsel, correct, through Ansel Grimm?
Yes.
With that,
Yes.
Why don't you let us have a discussion, and then at the appropriate time, we'll address everything, take it under advisement, and then if we have to, you have to do this by ordinance or not. It's not going to be effective until the first year following project completion anyway, so we can have a discussion rather than have an argument here.
And therein lies part of the other thing. We had an expectation that it was going to be, when we got our temporary CO based upon the original ordinance that was passed in 2016.
It was not an ordinance, it was a
Well-
resolution which only indicated that it was the intent, it was not binding.
Okay, it's the intent, it's not binding. Well, based upon.
And that you met all the statutory criteria, that you met all the borough code ordinances. that you
In
met
all
the
due deference, based upon your intent, I went out and spent one hell of a lot of money. So, we moved forward based upon that. I made deals with my restaurateur, I made deals with other people to try to get this project up in the marketplace. And there's an expectation when you do these financial performances, an expectation when you talk with bankers and they see that and they put it in, we're reasonable, we can deal with a year here or there. But when you start extending this out in time, everybody starts to question, why? What's going on? How come it's not working out the way the program is? So I've said
And I will
enough.
say that
I'm happy
you're-
to take you up on your suggestion of having a professional.
I'm sorry.
I'm happy to have our professionals
Yeah,
work
have to
together
contact us,
and
but-
try to sort it out.
But your office did mention to Mr. Vitale too that he did anticipate in the spring. That was Mr. Luke Ballerman
Yes,
said that
yes.
you do anticipate to have that in the spring.
Wait a minute, just so I'm clear, right? I have, the project is a very, very large project. I have a very, very nice relationship with all the code officials in town, whether it's fire protection or anybody that came through that entire process. And I represented to Paul that I was going to work towards getting the final C of O, as everybody knows. But as my father explained, there are a lot of other considerations, right? For example, top course of asphalt, I could go through a number of different things. And I did represent to Paul that we were trying to do that. Of course we are, right? We want to close the project out. There's a bond outstanding for the construction work. We want to close all these things out. However, I can't, and I told Paul this, that I can't predict that. But yes, I did
But you
represent.
did indicate you anticipate in the spring and I deferred it to
I
you.
anticipate a lot of things, but
Okay, well, I'll say this, our plan would be to move forward as fast as we can. That plan is extremely dependent on other governmental agencies providing the sign-offs that we need to bring to Mr. Keating's team. It's also dependent on our very practical boots on the ground judgment as to how our engineering systems are holding up. We don't, like I said, we don't want to spend a lot of money to undo something and do it all over again. So there's an element of practicality.
Right, but I still disagree with you.
Mr. Bowman,
Okay.
can I ask you a question?
Yes,
What government agencies are you waiting on final approval from? Are there any government agencies that you are waiting on?
That are not municipal.
that are not municipal. Okay, one right out of the gate that I'm familiar with would be Freehold Soil Conservation, because that approval was given for both what's now the Pulte side and our side. Our side is complete. We think they're happy with what we've done. We have no reason to think other than that. And, but Pulte obviously is not done with theirs. So there's no final there.
But
No.
there could be a final because that is now no longer part of your property, so that should be inspected separately.
They don't look at it like that. They look at it as an approval for the entire project. They don't bifurcate the application, for better or worse. They don't bifurcate it. They say, okay, this is all one project. Okay, we got developer A, we got developer B. They don't care. It's still one project. Okay,
It
there are
has
other.
been properly subdivided, so it is completely different lots of lots.
Yes, that's
and
correct.
lots.
That's 100% correct.
So then that should be able to be approved separately.
That's not the way the paperwork comes through, because they go back to the original tax lot forms. Happy to share it with you or your professionals or whatever.
I think that's
Secondly-
something that you should get your attorney on with Freehold Soil.
Okay.
Because
Sometimes,
that could be fast tracked to be just yours. You shouldn't have to wait for what Pulte's doing out there.
That's one, that's just one item.
No,
there
understand.
are a couple of DEP items sitting out there,
Couple of,
Department of Environmental Protection, having to do with, having to do with depth of the basin and as-built that need to be submitted over time before they're, 100% comfortable. So these things, whenever you're developing around the water, they're complicated. It's not like a building inland or a house over here. You're along the waterfront. And everybody, you've got to be sure that you have your I's dotted and your T's crossed. And, the worst thing that happen is to run forward to try to do something and accomplish something and then find out it's a problem and then have to backtrack. And then you really have a mess. Then you really have a problem in terms of,
may I ask if
working.
you've reached out to our engineer to try to help you through this process with both DEP and Freehold Soil? This is not supposed to be an adversarial relationship.
No.
We wanna help you get
I know,
your
I know,
project done.
I actually know you do, I know, and I'm not taking it other than constructive. The quick answer is, we have not reached out to T&M, we have a list that they've given us of items that we need to accomplish, there's maybe 12 of them. Whatever the number is, so in that range, right around there. But some of them do, the language in the item itself doesn't really reflect the issues that we need to address behind it in order to deal with other environmental agencies. So
It would be my advice for you to sit down with Dale when he's got office hours, or call, or, outside of office hours, to go through all of these things and to see how we can help you get through some of the process with these agencies that are just large and hard to manage.
So, some of it is just, not to be too difficult or argumentative, more in the way of, we each need to understand what the other person's dealing with, because again, as I said, I think you're gonna have another Jim sitting here with the next project you have in town, or Tom, or whoever it's gonna be. The issues are the same. And, they are just, these things find themselves, in a permit, or DEP capital permit, it's 24 pages, line after line after line, follow-up after follow-up, as built this, as built that. It's just, and a lot of times you can't get that information in the time frame. It takes a while.
No, I completely understand that.
But they're not gonna waive it.
The suggestion is we pay for an engineering team to service our town and its residents. I would just ask you, you have this resource here, use it. It'll help you, I promise.
Well, what we thought is, we thought, again, I want to be Tory, but we thought we were working with Mr. Heck on some tax issues, and the tax appeal, the tax abatement got wound up in with that. Mr. de Blasio was very helpful, but there are still some issues relating to Mr. Heck's work, which we hired an attorney to deal with. He looked at the whole thing and said, you should hire me, so did that. Again, we want to straighten all that out, but we didn't anticipate getting into a conversation about the standard by which you would be looking to use to implement your tax abatement. We were going on the early of the 2016 standard. So the conversation with Mr. Heck was, we got a temporary certificate of occupancy for the marina in March of 2016. We got a temporary certificate of occupancy to open the restaurant in November. It didn't open because Mr. Neal had things that he wanted to do until the spring. But we're under the assumption these restaurants open, the marina was open, and we thought we had achieved, quote, substantial completion in terms of satisfying the tax abatement criteria laid out in year 2016, whatever. Resolution. And that was the standard we were going with. We had no other standard to go with. I would have no idea at that point that you wanted a final or even a temporary.
Well, there are standards set forth by the statute of Borough Code, but rather than argue this,
Right.
I'm happy to meet with your attorney, with my office, your office, whatever, and I do suggest you talk to the T&M as well.
Okay, all right.
Address all that.
Thank you very much for your time. Did not mean to be argumentative in any way.
Okay, does anyone else have anything to add to that?
I actually do a quick question, is it talking about,
Name and
sorry,
address.
so Bill Eiler, 30 Madison Street, 165A. Was that part of the discussion about a tax abatement, which is a specific rollback for a period of time?
Yes.
Why wouldn't we work with the business owner to start it earlier and not fight with them? Because it may be to our advantage since you.
I don't think anyone here has been fighting.
I'm just saying, if we have a disagreement about an interpretation and application, I would say that it makes sense for our town to think about putting it in earlier, because it has a start point and end point, so whatever it's going to be the same amount of time. This argument seems to center on a disagreement about TCO versus substantial completion versus readiness. The gray areas in there seems to me to be flexible enough that we can work with the business owner to brought on the largest projects and improvements to this town and make them happy, quite frankly. It actually may help taxpayers because we're putting it in earlier. And the presumption is you get the business wherever it's going to get it started, and then when it ends later, taxes will presumably be higher, and therefore we're not losing as much at the back end. It makes every bit of common sense to do it earlier. It's a fixed period of time, so that's not the argument. But put it in now, everybody's happier. We spend less town time fighting. Just a comment and observation.
Thank you.
Also from an economic development standpoint, to use a tax abatement as a business recruitment tool doesn't make sense. We're putting Captain's Cove in, a redevelopment area. There's potentially other, especially with the waterfront, the same situation would occur where you're dealing with federal agencies, and we all know how long that can take, to deal with those agencies. And anybody developing on the waterfront is gonna, come across the same issue. So I think, I agree with what Bill's saying, as, a business recruitment tool, it should be sooner rather than.
Mr. Shabara, is there any statutory definition of completeness? I mean, I'm a lonely homeowner,
Right.
business owner.
There is, and we had that discussion just before about occupiers for intended use, but there's also certain statutory requirements concerning the start date, which is the first full year following project completion. So the ordinance resolution, the statute will spell out when it can begin, when it can't, and as I said, the suggestion is we'll have a meeting with Mr. Bull and his council, we'll have a meeting with D&M and try to see if we can, address all these issues.
Anyone else? Okay. I close public comment.
Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 1723, tax agreement with Sandy Hook Developers LLC, block 101, lot 207.03?
I'm going to make that motion, and I'm going to do it for the following reason. For both the resolution as well as the ordinance, it says with completeness and to occupy. I've known this just from my dealings with my own home and insurance after Sandy. You don't get that final until you have a CO. I think it's a good standard to work by, that you don't have something that's dragging on for a long time. I think the completeness of a project and to occupy is spelled out with a CO. And as I've directed Mr. Goldman, use our staff to help you in any way that we can. I personally will help you in any way that I can to get this done quickly.
Do I have a second?
See, my issue is I'm very torn because I want to move it forward because I know we have to do it in this year. And I'm thinking there's a week left in this year, and if you're able to obtain your final CO in 3 months, then your abatement's still going to start a week after. But I also feel that it's just like or a year later.
2019.
Yeah, 2019. But I'm going to just vote no. I think we don't have it solidified enough yet where it feels like it's just words. Completion to CO. I mean, they've been operating for 2 years at a restaurant. They're on their second. So, I mean, that's just how I feel because they're operating. So 5 years is 5 years. It doesn't matter when it starts or how we. I don't know. I think there's too much ambiguity. I think we should have your attorneys sit with Brian, sit in the same room with Dale, and then come to an agreement that is solid.
And I'm going to agree with you.
We have no second. Motion, the ordinance is. There's no seconds.
There's no second.
There is no seconds. The ordinance is not adopted.
There's no yellow now.
Okay, ordinance 1724, amend stipend for healthcare benefit waivers to employees.
Anyone? Opening public comment. Anyone have any questions on this? Seeing none, I will close public comment.
Motion to adopt ordinance 1724, amend stipend for healthcare benefits waivers to employees. Do I have a motion?
You have a motion?
I'll second.
Councilmember Young?
Yes.
Councilmember Card is absent. Councilmember DiRigo?
Yes.
Councilmember Kane Wells?
Yes.
Mayor O'Neill is absent. Ordinance 1724 has been properly adopted. Ordinance 1726, establishing salaries and fixed compensation for certain employees for 2018.
Before I open this up to public comment, I just wanted to make everyone aware that the last time that we actually did a salary ordinance was 2013. And with that, does anyone have any comments? Yes, ma'am.
I'm not going through David Shore Drive. I really don't have a problem with establishing salaries and fixing compensation. My problem is there are a lot of areas in there that I don't know if we have them filled or if they're just there. And I would like to know who is in those spots and the salaries of those people.
Okay, not all of the list of people. They are just salaries and titles that have been made by ordinance. So there could be a title that, like rec director, that has not been filled, but we're going to keep that title and that salary range in there for when we do have a rec director.
I understand that, but there are others in there probably that I'm really interested in that. I'd just like to see the salaries that people in the staff are making. And it's not part of the ordinance. It's just a salary number.
I was going to say, that's on Data Star.
Yeah.
Not Data Universe.
Data Universe, you could pull up any public employee's
It's not
salary.
up to date.
It's not.
Kim says it is.
It is up to date.
No,
Well, it's up to date by year. It's a year behind, right? Does anyone else have any comments on this? Okay, then I'll close public portion.
Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 1726, establishing salaries and fixed compensation for certain employees for 2018?
I offer that motion.
I'll second it.
Councilmember Breon.
Yes.
Councilmember Carter is absent. Councilmember Diorigo.
Yes.
Councilmember Kane Wells.
Yes.
Mayor O'Neill is absent. Ordinance 1726 has been properly adopted. Other business, like elementary school, we already been through. Highlands Housing Authority RAD Award.
Okay, I just wanted to bring this up to the public. I'm also Commissioner on the Housing Authority, and here's just a little blurb about some good information that's just come through. So it's that be advised, the Highlands Housing Authority was recently awarded $911,000 from the New York Federal Home Loan Bank to help subsidize the authority's conversion to HUD's Rental Assistance Demonstration Program. It's commonly known as RAD. These funds, along with other sources, will be used to provide various capital improvements to both of the authority's developments. It is anticipated that the authority will be able to fund approximately $1.5 million in improvements, which will most certainly better the quality of life for our residents at Patack and in Jenny Parker Manor. In addition, with the RAD conversion, it will provide additional monies through project-based rental assistance programs that will allow authority to solidify the future and continue to operate in an efficient and effective manner. It is expected with the conversion to take place in mid-2018, with the hopes of construction on these facilities happening shortly thereafter. So it's basically capital improvements for Jenny Parker Manor and Patack Tower. So it's a good thing, right? It's something that's been worked on for a few years by the commissioners and the administration, Doug and Renee.
Next on the agenda, engineers report and 2017 in review.
Thank you, Bonnie. Just the normal report this month. The only update I have is on the road program. Basically, there's a lot of work going on Bay Street. All the sanitary sewer work has been completed. Majority of the concrete work has been completed. Today they were up there milling out half the road and putting the base course pavement down. Tomorrow they'll complete the rest of that. They'll do the second half going down towards Grand Tour and base course that to seal the road up for the winter. Over the next couple of weeks, we anticipate getting the drainage in. Down by the Woodland Street area, there's additional drainage we have to put in. And then once the weather breaks back in the spring, we'll complete the remaining concrete work, curb work, and then put the top course of pavement on the roadway. The reason we kind of jumped around to get the base course in, we know the plants usually close up around Christmas time. Next week there's a premium that goes up on the asphalt itself. So it was, in the condition the road was in, it was conducive to get that road based and cleaned up before the plants start closing down. So that's a good thing that's happening up there. Also, majority of the curb work has been completed on North Peak Street. That'll be closed up and sealed for the winter, and then that'll be paved in the spring. Also, Miller Street, as you know, has been paved, and then Twin Lakes Terrace, that work will also commence in the spring. Besides that, there's really nothing else to update on. I'm still trying to get the pole relocated, or I should say replaced at Veterans Park for the electric project. Verizon is holding that up now. Jersey Central did submit all their paperwork. They said they are waiting on Verizon. And speaking of pole relocation, just jumping back to the road program, we did get word from Jersey Central that they are looking to relocate the pole on Bay Street on the 3rd of January, weather permitting. And that's pretty much it as far as an update for tonight. So things are moving along. I do have an end of the year report that I'd like to also read out to you. This year in 2017, the phase 2 of the streetscape project from Valley to Washington was completed. That was stamped concrete, it was decorative lights, it was tree grates. That was part of the DBIS loan that was out there for, I believe it was $525,000 in that ballpark. Also, as I just previously mentioned, we did resurface Miller Street from Shore Drive to Bay Avenue. New ADA ramps, it was a mill and overlay. A good portion of that was paid by a DOT grant of $83,000. I just talked about the reconstruction of Bay Street, that's ongoing. North Peak Street also, I just mentioned that's ongoing. Betts Park, again, everything hinges on that utility pole. The contract's in place, the contractor is patiently waiting. He does have the materials, shop drawings have been approved. As soon as that pole is relocated and Jersey Central puts a transformer on the new pole, that work can be completed, and that'll take a matter of 2 to 3 weeks. There was the revetment at the South Bay Avenue pump station for the erosion that was going on the platform and the boardwalk. That was completed. That's also a FEMA reimbursable project. The outfall pipe valves that we've been talking about, working with TideFlex on, the 3 that that were in play, we'll call it, was Veterans Park, Cedar Street, and the end of Jackson Street. They have been ordered. I've been told those valves are expected here. They said 3 to 4 weeks. That'll put us into January, and that was also through a HMGP grant of $50,000. Also, as you know, we've been aggressively cleaning and televising sanitary and storm sewer lines throughout town. There's been a lot of debris and sand that's been taken out of the storm sewers. A large amount of grease, to my understanding, taken out of the sanitary sewers. So it's good that we're being proactive on our pipes. I don't have an exact length, but I will say there has been several miles of pipe that have been cleaned and televised this year, which is a good thing to keep up with the infrastructure. And that's my list for 2017. If anybody has any questions on that, but I think it's been a good year. Obviously, a lot more to do. It'll be an aggressive year next year to continue on with this process.
Thank you, Dan.
Chief, please update.
Quickly. We received I'm happy to announce we received the pedestrian safety grant again this year, and the amount, I think it's $11,500. The better part is we received an additional $11,500, which no one got except us. What I'm looking to do is I met with the council. I'm constantly contacting the county. We're looking at getting, you may have seen them in other municipalities, they're flashing pedestrian signs. They go on both sides of the street. You press the button, there's amber lights that light up, and the other side of the street lights up as well. They're around $10,000. So we're looking at getting those, but we have to get county approval. And we're looking at the area of Woodbridge and Shore Drive, obviously, for volume. There's some other signs that we're looking at as well. Linden Avenue is going to get some new signs soon because Linden Avenue, you can't park on Linden Avenue when their road is snow covered. Spoken with the DPW supervisor. We went out and notified all the residents yesterday with flyers. So that's coming forth. We had an incident with a package that got stolen. So as the holiday approaches, even more so after the holiday with returns, we just want to remind people, we thought I was going to mention the last meeting, we didn't have anything, but I thought a Facebook post would take care of that. just remind people to watch out for your neighbors. Not only your own packages, but safeguard your neighbors. If you see something, say something, give us a call. If you see somebody there with the packages. And I want to thank the residents, people who are watching out here. We've received a lot of praises lately. I've gotten a lot of phone calls. My guys are getting cards. I'm getting cards praising my officers for things that they're doing. We just want to say thank you, and people are dropping off food for the holidays and stuff like that. We just want to thank everybody for that. That's it.
Thank you, Chief.
Administrators report?
22 Shore Drive, we did make that move, it's permanent now. The old rental is gonna be removed, the disconnects were done for the utilities. Jay Bergione, the interim tax assessor, has taken over the hours on Tuesday evenings from 5 to 7 p.m. We'll have to look down to the tax assessor. Bay Street, it's still underway, and the utility company, as Dale said, is going to be setting up a pole, so that's all set up. And I will assist Dale as well with the Verizon issue with Veterans Park. I'll help get that moved along as well. There's going to be a repair to the fence along Waterwitch and Linden Avenue, the stretch that goes down the hill there. The mayor and I took a ride over there, and we're going to do some repairs over there for people, pedestrians and children walking down the hill. We're looking at doing a borough-wide shred event with residents and the borough themselves. They're going to be able to come and drop off all their items that need to be shredded. We don't have a date yet, but I will let you know as soon as we set that date up. And I just wanted to thank all the employees for 2017. It was a great year. And thank you for everyone's support while I was speaking from the
Open the meeting to the public?
Go ahead.
Kim Sperger, 315 Shore Drive. I want to thank Chief Burton and the council for working on the pedestrian safety. I know it's one of my really important items in town. It's been a while since I've been to a meeting, but whoever decided to do 2 resolutions on a page, double-sided, saving some trees, I very much appreciate it. It's the small things in life. But I have to tell you, I am absolutely disgusted that Mayor O'Neill is absent. You let him call and vote on an ordinance that wasn't going to move forward, and then you all of a sudden disappear. If he's not here, he shouldn't be able to vote. You shouldn't be able to call in and pick and choose your topics. You're either here or you're not. And I hope to see on January 1st an amendment to the ordinance so that I can get a parking permit too, because I deserve the courtesy that the rest of Shore Drive has. Thank you.
Okay. Name and address for the record, please.
Nancy Burton, 22 Atlantic Street, co-owner of the Garden 69 Waterwitch Avenue. I just want to, for the record, talk about the comment of how the Highlands Business Partnership is responsible for attracting new businesses to town, and I believe that Claudette may have mentioned how many businesses have we attracted to town. I feel that the hard work and dedication of the Highlands Business Partnership in the last 5 years has attracted over 15 businesses to town, and I have those listed here. Et al. Bay Point Inn, the new ice cream parlor in Wickies, Porcini, Fresh, Feed and Seed, the t-shirt printing company, which I'm forgetting, Steve Sala, the new owners at Welsh Farms, for the Welsh Farms property, Seabright Auto Lobby, Seafair, Ilago, the yoga studio, which is Unique Yoga. The vet, we have 2 new dog groomers that would not have had in the new property owner, business operator, and then a brand new dog groomer. And I may be forgetting 1 or 2, but
The vet.
more. I mentioned the vet. Oh, and Summerhouse. It's on my list here. Summerhouse. So I feel that the Highlands Business Partnership is doing a fantastic job. We work with the borough to make improvements on the sidewalks. We also work with the police explorers. We donate over $2,000 a year, if I'm not mistaken, of our funds towards uniforms and programs. We also allow them to use our raffle license to sell tickets numerous times, and they raise We partnered with them to raise thousands of dollars, and I know you are all aware of it, but I would like to be on the record, especially too for the people at home who are listening. I feel that, yes, there can be changes made to our recreation department, but I think you can do some more residential-based resident programs as a business owner. I get a lot of attention from the Highlands Business Partnership events and different things that we bring to town. I know people move to our town and buy homes here because of our events. They talk about our events all the time. They talk about our businesses. They come back. We can't go anywhere else without, we can eat at a different restaurant every day of the week. This is a great town. You have a walking district. So I feel that it's being misled, the ideas about the Highlands Business Partnership. We're doing a fantastic job, and Carla and our staff, Carla is not our staff, but our staff is doing a great job. Let's just make sure that that's all I wanted to mention. I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nancy.
Okay, I would like to make a few comments. Okay, I was tasked to talk to the disgruntled business owners. That was the job I was given. That's what I did. There are many disgruntled business owners. As far as bringing new businesses in, many of those new businesses that you have mentioned were coming here anyway, or were existing restaurants before and replaced with another restaurant. When I say new business, actively going out and using the funding that's provided to attract new and different businesses. We have a lot of empty storefronts. And a lot of people, a lot of businesses that we have are affected by certain things that occur that people forget about. But they're very vital businesses. So yes, you are correct that there are good things happening. But my task that I was tasked to do was to talk to the unhappy business owners. And the reports I got back that I collected, and I stopped at many places, was, yes, they were not, it was not everyone, but the job at hand was to target the ones that were not happy and find out why. And that's what my job is. So just so you understand, that's what I was tasked by the mayor to do.
And I'm sorry, if I could just make another comment. No, the events in town, I wanted to mention, the parade day, any of our parade days, the Chili Fest, these type of events, the business owners will tell you, and I forgot to mention Lindsay is a new business owner, but that's their busiest days of the year. So your survey, or if you want to call it a survey, I can't wait to see the new results from the proper survey. Your survey and tabling or abstaining from our calendar events are two different things. We shouldn't hold up what we're trying to do and our hard work and dedication because we spend a lot of time with them. So I'm glad that it was approved, but they shouldn't have been together. If there's other ways of going about it and at different times.
Yes.
It's Bill Eiler, 165 Avenue and 3rd Jackson Street. Two separate areas of comment. One I tried to be brief about, which is the HVP, and I second Nancy's comments. I have come from a past where I wasn't a fan of the HVP 10 or 12 years ago, and then owned businesses in town, tried to do businesses, and it was not anything to do without the HVP. So I'm a convert, quite frankly. I think that's a pretty strong testament. And I also think it's axiomatic that people that have the worst restaurant meals go to Yelp. The ones that have good ones really don't give reviews.
Right.
Number two, when you're doing a lot, you tend to attract criticism. If you do nothing, you won't. And I will tell you that Carla does a lot. I've seen the sidewalks improve. I've seen her attempt, almost like Don Quixote building a windmill, to get a sidewalk ordinance, to get rid of chain link fences, to help with our lighting. These are things, quite frankly, and I specified this in Mrs. Barrero, that our council should have helped more with. And she is challenged at every turn by the council sometimes. And I scratch my head and I wonder why. So without a champion like Carla in place, and without a distinct role allocated by the tax dollars to her, I feel that we would be wasting our tax dollars. We pay a special extra assessment for her purposes, and we also pay a regular assessment that includes our right to have police, fire, and other general assistance. I was on the Atlantic Highlands Chamber of Commerce for a number of years. I think Carla outshines them in the amount of things she's able to do with a small staff and a relatively narrow window of time to focus on it, and quite frankly, a far more difficult town to work with. She should be lionized and not accused at this point. Mr. Salo has not been present in a couple of meetings I've been at. I don't think he was seeing the same things I saw because I feel like I have a dramatically different opinion than his. So it's important when somebody, and I don't say somebody that is Carl personally, but when our organization is attacked, if there are people who support it, we should speak up just as strongly. That's why I'm doing that now. To finish my comment, if there is a survey in the poll, I almost don't care. Get involved in the HPP, get yourself nominated on the board, and try to do 10% of the work that's done by the people that are there, and then start complaining. And I will say this specifically. My little hotel was booked 3 solid weekends in a row. By the Oktoberfest, by the Clam Fest, literally people were turned away by those 2 events. That alone sold my entire bid fee for the year. I don't know if they do this Twin Lakes ride, but they certainly promote it. I don't know how that works, but I had people turned away for that one also. I hope they're there forever. If they weren't here, I couldn't rent my yoga studios business. I couldn't have tried to get Yolanda on speak because she was instrumental in promoting them. I've worked with 2 or 3 more restaurant owners and I'm trying to show places in town. And every one of them has gotten a personal tour and an insider story from Carla that has made me feel welcomed and supported, and it's something that's entirely missing when you speak of any other town official. So if we don't have her, we've lost half of our marketing for this entire town. So to say that the recreation director is a position that could also do the kind of service that Carla gives, I think it's disingenuous, frankly. I don't know if you own the business, I don't know if you experience Carla directly, but you're not aware of the reality of what you're actually saying. I don't know if it's a power grab or something, but in my opinion, I would fight strongly to see Carla or someone like her stay in that role and not commingle it with some other facility, including rental of this building, which has nothing to do with how I run my business.
Again, I was tasked to do certain things, which I did. Please don't single out one individual person.
I'm sorry, Carla, that you expressed opinions which I'm challenging.
Right.
Right to speak that
But
into the
again,
record.
I was tasked, it wasn't just one business owner that spoke to the mayor. And the mayor asked me to take on this job, that's what I did.
I respect that, but I hope that it doesn't detract from 900 people, and she's doing a great job.
Well, Bill, and that's what we're gonna find out when the survey goes to all of the business and.
My comment on that area is closed, I just want Carla to know.
And mine
that.
have not been.
And if I could just direct my last comment, so I can get out of here much.
Sure.
I have had a mission to try to do what I think is civically right in this town, and try to make it better visually, which I think is a number 1 attraction for our economic development. Maybe it's a pet topic, I thought I had other support for it, I'm not sure. This is about the location of the new town hall and the setting it seems to be chosen. Just a couple of comments on that. One, I'm going to thank Councilperson Brouillon and Kim Gonzalez, who not only held the meeting to discuss and did as much as they could to bring it to the public response, but followed up with some questions and answers for me as well as Dale. I essentially feel like I'm putting my hand in a black box and being told to feel what this object is and I'm touching it. I'm stopped at every point of true information when I say, well, what's the survey that said we got to put the town hall up to 36 in Miller? Well, we did one in a professional bid for it, but we can't share it with you right now because it's protected by confidentiality. I then asked about what about looking at other places? Well, we can't really do that right now because we're in contract negotiation with another spot. I then asked about, well, what does that contract negotiation involve? What are the timeframes? What are the permits and approvals? And what kind of things are going there? Well, we can't really discuss it because it's a contract. I expressly remember the giant furor that started out this most recent council was the Stonehenge project. And I expressly remember Doug Hart and Councilperson Dorigo promising this town that never again would we have some kind of a town project or a location of something without full, clear, and involved and partner disclosure with the townspeople. I can't think of any project that impacts more of a business district or people who just want to go get a dog license than the location of town hall. I can't think of any process to see less scrutiny, less public input, and more appropriately preserves the poll. If there are 5 people that are angry about the HPP and our council is tasked with creating a poll, I'll find you 6 people who are unhappy about the town hall location. Let's have a poll about that. And inherent in the design of that poll, ask the questions in a way that elicits a valid answer. Say that we have 8 locations we're figuring on which one do you like, not do you like this one or not. There are different ways to design a question. Let me step one step backwards. I sent a letter to you all tonight through Ms. Brooks' offices But in essence, I see two different things here. You're taking the town hall function, you're told it's a town hall. You're combining this town hall into a municipal complex, and that's the word you should be using. What I discovered to my surprise was, it's not just our town hall that was on Bay Avenue. It's the first aid squad downtown. It's the municipal court services that are now over in Highlands. It's an OEM office facility.
Mr. Ivan, we have had these discussions
Mr.
numerous
Rego,
times.
please do not interrupt me. Let me finish my speech.
Well, we have
I
had
need
these
to have
discussions.
my time on record for this without interruption. Thank you. So now that we have this facility that apparently has to have 6 or 7 components, I was given a very clear discussion about all those components need police things and access ways for prisoners and first aid squad. The first thing that was occurred to me is nobody's ever considered that these things are separated now. Why can't they continue to be so? It would dramatically change, and these are rhetorical questions. I would like to finish without having an interruption. Thank you. Please let me finish. I'll let you know when I'm done. I got the floor. Our first aid squad and our OEM squad could fit easily on the old Careless Navigator site. It's completely out of flood zone. It has wonderful highway access up and down the hill, and it doesn't interfere with traffic. Every piece of Shore Drive, according to the Monmouth County GIS survey that shows that your DFE, says that everything that's west, including Shore Drive, west of Shore Drive, is in the Zone X. That's a 500-year floodplain. I read the materials that Ms. Gonzalez provided me, and while the FEMA rules recommend there being a 500-year chance of flood, they're also okay with 100. But I'm going to go with 500 because you guys think that's the way to go. We could have our OEM and first aid squad sitting in the Careless Navigator lot, which is a blight on the town right now. We could put something beautiful there for $1 million, right? We could take the blighted area of Shore Drive, which looks good for about 10 minutes while there's a bike path on. We could eliminate the chain link fences and the trailers. It's already elevated to Zone X on the westerly side of the street with 1 foot of dirt. We could elevate the other side. You could have a municipal complex over there that has your police, that has anything else you wanted, and have adequate parking across from it. And the money that was going to go up on 36 would beautify that entire horrible looking section of town. The third thing is the town hall itself, the business office, the records and construction department. We can reuse the existing town hall property. We can put these things on a level that's 14 feet above the ground. We can have a pass-through underneath that goes to 2nd Avenue. We can restore this major component of downtown, of Highlands. We can use properties we already own. We don't have to buy other properties for most of these things. The last part of that is municipal court, which we use every other week on a Tuesday, I think. I have not noticed anybody complaining about the fact they got to go over to Atlantic Highlands for the wonderful new building, and we share services. So my request to the council tonight is consider the positives of breaking this bundled municipal complex up into a more traditional small town set of buildings that fit in our downtown. Number 2, give the public a right to look at the different areas downtown and comply with the flood requirements and the parcels that already need seem obviously suited for it. Number 3, take a look at the safety issues and the zoning issues and the highway issues with the Highway 36 parcel. If you put a bundled municipal complex up there, there's no way somebody going to get a building permit is going to be able to slow down on the crest of Highway 36 at 50 miles an hour, make a left-hand turn into that parking lot. There's no way that it creates a walkable situation for the residents that want to walk through their business in that hall. You're going to be creating this amazing traffic intersection, which is already a screwed up, not quite a next intersection. And now you're going to ask ambulances and fire trucks and police cars and prisoners to be.
Bill, there's going to be separate town hall meetings that are going to address this issue.
So
So if we could just wrap it up.
I agree to wrap it up, but
Yep.
you know what? Everybody's got to have a little bit of time on this one for 1 second. It's a big deal when they're in this.
When we have meetings that are just dedicated to this issue.
This is a council meeting, which I'm asking this council to delay further action on.
This council has 2 members missing and 2 members will not be here in 2 weeks.
So nothing's going to happen in town before based on the contract for the railroad site, is that correct?
The
Direct
contract,
question to our attorney.
the contract was signed September 25th, as you know, there was an ordinance adopted last year. We are under contract right now. There are certain contingencies that were contained therein. The borough did their feasibility study, they did their phase 1 environmental study, they did their survey. We are waiting on the approvals from the land use board for them to get their parking on the adjacent lot. Once that contingency is satisfied, the borough is then obligated to disclose on the property. Just so you're aware, as you mentioned.
Understood, and that's why I was talking about the timing.
I just wanted to clarify because you asked.
Thank you, Mr. Trevor. As with any real estate contract, as with the donation of an art piece in town, as with anything else that involves the transfer of property, we can stop this at any time, which is why I'm asking you to stop spending money on it right now.
We're not spending any money.
Well, apparently we just committed to phase 1 survey.
This was done by ordinance.
Okay, we're moving towards a closing date. I'd like to ask the council to consider delaying it and allowing this council to have a public poll presented that tells us where other sites would be then found, and whether there's an option to unbundle the services and use the continuing Atlantic Highlands Municipal Court situation to save money. Thank you very much for the time.
Yes, young lady.
Carol Buckle, thank you. Carol Buckle, 330 Shore Drive. I forgot that I wanted to ask about that town hall meeting because the take was not good. And it seemed to me like there weren't very many people there. I thought it was a meeting with Highlands.
So did I.
So did I. Too bad no one else.
But I think that planning of it needs to be a little more considered.
Understood.
Sorry. I just wanna, I'll end the meeting of public portion on a
Event.
positive note.
Okay.
I too wanna commend, the Highlands Police Department. Nowhere else can you get this kind of service. We actually, were the victims of the, stolen merchandise, one of our tenants. We reported it late Friday night, and by Sunday morning, it was resolved, and, we solved the case. And I just really think that they're worth their weight in gold, and really want to commend the job they do. And I wanted to thank Chief Burton for coming out on his day off to help with the Winter Wonderland run. So thank you.
With that, I'll close the public portion, but not before I thank Councilwoman Rebecca Kane Wells for 15 years of service to the board. Yes. Time to move on. Now that it really gets us.
Yes, I don't think I'll really ever go away, but, yes, I'll still be volunteering, I'll still be, I don't think I get upset. But, I think I've done this for 3/4 of my life, so. Stay there.
Thank you.
You will be missed.
Thank
For beverage.
There we go.
I was thinking, I was caught off guard.
Good night. Oh. There you go. I don't think.
Doug is also not going to be here next year, and he'd asked me to explain why. He cannot be here this evening for his final council meeting. He's currently, along with my husband Fausto, in Puerto Rico for a 3-month commitment in a program that I help coordinate to assist in the restoration of power to the remote towns and villages in Puerto Rico. He is being housed on an army base right now, outside of the small city of Juana Diaz. He's in charge of over 30 power line assessors and volunteers, and they're working 12 hours on and off every day, I should say, 7 days a week, including Christmas and New Year's, and will not be with his family during those times. So on behalf of myself, I would like to thank him for his council service and wish him the best in his future endeavors. And Rebecca, you and I have had many a difference, but, we've talked about many things also, and I really do appreciate all the years of service that you have given. You and I have corresponded recently over things, and I look forward to working with you on hopefully the after-school program that we were discussing before. And I'm kind of tied up in a lot of other things going on with the hurricanes and everything. And Dale, do you want me to mention the other thing?
If you want to, or the lack thereof.
Okay, well, today was supposed to be the day, December 20th, was supposed to be the day we were supposed to get our letter of determination signed, or not determination signed. Dale and I have been actively trying to chase down Andrew Martin from FEMA. He is non-responsive to Dale. Dale's been constantly on his back. He assured us as late as last week that we would have the letter today. It is not here. Our hands are tied. The excuse will be because FEMA is in Puerto Rico, which we already know. And that's what I said. Maybe Doug and Fausto can go search him out and get him to sign this letter, but it is not here as of right now, right, Dale?
Yeah, I just checked.
So we didn't want to let everybody not know that, so we're telling you.
Okay.
Here's the Becky.
All right. Good night. night, everyone. Thank
We have a
you.
motion to adjourn?
Yes.